Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the First District 86 Board of Education Candidate Forum. My name is... My name is Ryan Asmus. I'm a 16-year resident of Burr Ridge, and I've served on the Gower District 62 Board of Education for the last 10 years. I will serve as tonight's moderator. Tonight we're joined by all 9 candidates for the April 2nd election. As a reminder, there are a total of 4 board seats up for election, a single 2-year term and 3 4-year terms. The candidates are seated before you in a randomly selected order. Each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 2-minute opening statement. The questions I will ask tonight were generated from questions and topics submitted by the public. None of the candidates have seen the questions in advance, and there will be no questions from the audience. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer each question. The order in which the candidates answer each question was predetermined using a random sequence generator. The first candidate to answer will have 60 seconds in which to do so, and each candidate thereafter will have 45 seconds. We have a timer in the front row. You'll get a 10-second warning and a please wrap up your answer quickly warning. At the close of questions, each candidate will have an opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement. In order to stay on time tonight, I would ask that everyone hold their applause until the conclusion of tonight's event. So we're going to begin with opening statements, and we are going to start left to right. So, Marty?
Okay. You know, I think, can everybody hear me? I don't think we need.
For the Facebook, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Is that better? There we go.
There you go.
Good afternoon, good evening. First of all, thank you for being the moderator here, and thank you for the committee that put this on. I also want to thank my fellow candidates who are running. It takes a lot to put yourself out there and be willing to volunteer, so I commend you all. Again, my name is Marty Turek. The reason I know that it's hard to do is I've been on the District 181 school board for 8 years. I've lived in the community. I want to make sure. I'm 47 years old. I've lived in Clarendon Hills for 17 years. I have 2 wonderful twin daughters who are freshmen at Hinsdale Central, and a son who's in 6th grade at CHMS. And my wife should be here, but we've been married for 18 years, and she's running late, so we'll cut her some slack. This is an interesting time in our district. This is an interesting time, certainly for District 86, and I think experience is important here. I volunteer for this for one simple reason, to give back to the community. I know a lot of dads out there, I don't coach the football or the baseball. I'm a member at my church, but I'm not an active participant, so this is my way to give back to the community. I am a product of District 181. I went to Oak School, I went to the former Hinsdale Junior High, and then I'm a graduate of Hinsdale Central. I'm also a graduate from the University of Illinois with a history degree and also an MBA from the University of Illinois. The reason I know this is so hard is because it takes a lot of time and effort to be a school board member. I don't know everybody intimately, but I know Mrs. Mayer, she can talk intimately about how much time it takes. The experience I talk about over the last 8 years, I've had the pleasure, I say, of working with 3 superintendents. While I was on the board, we hired 2 of them. We have a balanced budget, and we've done a lot. So one thing I'd like to close with is I am not here just for the referendum. I am a yes, but there is a lot of other things that go into being a school board member that you have to get ramped up very quick on, and I think I have that ability. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, my name is Matt Mayer, and I want to thank everyone from the Hinsdale South community for the opportunity to introduce myself and to get to meet people. I'm fortunate enough to have my wife Donna here. We have a son that's 28 years old, graduate of Purdue, finished in 4 years, is working and living in Chicago. I grew up in Hinsdale during the 70s, attending, and I'm a proud graduate of St. Isaac Jogues in Hinsdale Central, the class of 79. I also attended Monroe School 3rd and 4th grade before I transferred to St. Isaac's for 5th through 8th. growing up in the 70s, both the schools and my parents, they really instilled in me a desire to serve others. This is witnessed by the volunteer activities that I've done with the church, also in coaching baseball. And I was asked by some people to consider this position, and after thinking about it, it just felt like the right time to be participating in this process to be a board member. I've stayed connected with the community through classmates, work clients, and friends from both high schools, Hinsdale Central and Hinsdale South. Listening and observing parents and students about the opportunities and challenges. This is why I really feel I'm qualified to become a board member for District 86. My professional background and business acumen will bring thought leadership with the other board members and superintendent. I'm qualified for this board position, holding a master's degree in previous board experience with muscular dystrophy for 10 years. And again, St. Isaac Jogues is a chairman of the men's group and co-chair of a very, very important program, transitional housing. Thank you.
Good evening, District 86, friends and neighbors. I am Dr. Fotini Bakopoulos, a caucus-endorsed candidate running for the District 86 Board of Education. I am a 20-year veteran teacher who has worked on numerous committees focused on curriculum, instruction, finance, and school climate. In all these venues, I have acquired valuable skills in collaborative problem solving. I have worked for the last 16 years in a district that has embraced and implemented the alignment of all course sequences in 3 high schools. I have personally experienced the intellectual consequences for students who are offered an anemic academic curriculum. I understand school code and language and the importance of putting students first. This is why I believe I am uniquely qualified to assist the board with the educational, financial, and infrastructure challenges that this district will experience over the next decade. As an independent candidate, I will be limited in the time I can respond to the questions and explain my platform. My platform, simply put, is to both support and advance the 4 values embedded in District 86's school mission statement. A commitment to students first, a commitment to diversity, a commitment to fiscal responsibility, and a commitment to excellence. I have entered the race to advance the educational goals and values written in District 86's mission statement. If elected, I would strongly advocate for academic and co-curricular programs. The cancellation of co-curriculars is a violation of all 4 of these values. It certainly doesn't put students first, it undervalues diversity, it wasn't fiscally responsible, and it certainly redefines the meaning of excellence. I believe my professional background and practical experiences will serve as an important resource as a board member for District 86. Thank you.
I'm gonna sit, maybe start a trend. My name is Cynthia Hansen. I'm a 43-year resident of District 86. I grew up in Willowbrook. My family has lived there since 1976. And so as I grew up, I feel like I watched this community grow up. I'm an alumna of Hinsdale South. After that, I went off to U of I to Champaign to get my psychology degree. From there, came back up to the big city, Loyola University, to get my master's in education, in counseling and higher education. My whole professional career was in the area of higher education, so I've worked at several universities in this area. I started at Aurora University, down back to the city at DePaul University, working with underrepresented populations. U of I in Chicago with the College of LAS, interpreting policies for undergraduate students, their courses, and graduation requirements. Most recently, I taught at Ring Valley Community College. I taught success skills to students transitioning to higher education. My husband and I have 4 kids, and we as a family have been members of this district for over 20 years now. We've lived in all over this district. Darien, moved to Clarendon Hills for a while, back to Willowbrook, and currently are in Burridge. So my oldest is 2nd generation D86 grad. I have a freshman currently at Hinsdale South, an 8th grader coming up, a rising 8th grader. And my 5th grader is, when she gets to high school, will be the class of 2026. So that's coming soon. Currently I serve on the Gower District 62 Board of Education. My term is up in April. During my tenure there, under the guidance of a phenomenal superintendent that we have, we approved 2 teachers' contracts, and we've supported various initiatives that tend to student needs, their diverse interests, also keeping in mind community and district resources. I'm running right now because it's both a difficult and exciting time for the district. We're in the first stages of aligning best practices and looking forward to focusing more on how we serve our students in the future. Thank you.
I'm going to continue this trend. Good evening, my name is Yvonne Mayer, and I am a 17-year resident of D86 living in Burr Ridge. My husband, Jeff Mayer, and I are proud parents of 4 children who attended D181 schools and graduated from Hinsdale Central. D86 is in the midst of a fiscal, curriculum, and communication crisis that has divided the 7 communities it serves. The Board of Education has an obligation to solve this crisis in a fiscally responsible manner that ensures that all students receive an outstanding and equitable public education in ADA-compliant buildings that will meet the needs of 21st century learners. I'm running for the board because I believe I have the skill set, experience as a fiscally responsible school board member of D81 in the past, and commitment to the D86 community to be an effective board member. I've regularly attended board meetings for the last 8 years, advocated before the board on issues that impacted students, served on the 2 citizens facility task forces, and I've remained engaged and informed on all D86 issues even after my youngest graduated. In addition, I served on the D181 board that eliminated a $5 million budget deficit, and we did it without negatively impacting classrooms, and we successfully negotiated a teacher's contract that included a 1-year base salary freeze during the economic downturn. My past board experience has prepared me to tackle the fiscal challenges that D86 is facing. I believe in curriculum equity, providing all students with opportunities to maximize their academic potential. If elected, I will advocate for data-driven decisions on proposed curriculum changes to ensure that they do improve student performance. Most importantly, I'm an advocate of open governance, transparency, and allowing the community to engage in a meaningful way with the board on district issues and decisions that will impact students. I hope tonight's forum will allow you all to make informed decisions on who to vote for, where we all stand on the issues, and that on April 2nd, you will choose to vote for me. Thank you very much.
Allison will remain seated. It's a good trend. Hello, my name is Eric Held. Thank you all for coming out on this cold night. I live in Westmont with my wife, Mandy, and our 3 kids, ages 9, 5, and almost 3. We're in the Marker District, District 60. I'm currently serving my 2nd year with the Marker Education Foundation, and it's been a joy to review grants and approve projects that have positively complemented an already excellent education system. I work at UBS Financial Services and have for over 13 years. I'm a first vice president in wealth management, and for the last 2 years, I've been recognized by Forbes as one of America's top next-gen wealth advisors. My business is centered on goals-based financial planning, using a client's finite pool of resources to accomplish what they really aspire to do, while controlling risk and cost. Across a wide variety of individuals, endowments, foundations, and corporations, I work closely with my clients to achieve positive results, without being afraid to say no, or sometimes even harder, not yet. It's this experience and skill set that I bring to the board. Now, my most important reasons for running for the board are threefold, and they are ages 9, 5, and almost 3. They might not be in either high school right now. One day they will be attending Hinsdale Central or Hinsdale South. We'll see. As a Hinsdale Central class of 99 graduate, I know the strength of the educational experience provided here. This is my high school district. I feel a sense of ownership and responsibility to preserve and better it, not just for my kids, but for the whole district. And the district deserves board members that will continue to build for the future, that are willing to consider every tool in the toolbox, unconstrained by one particular orthodoxy or ideology. I'm not a single issue candidate, and neither are my running mates on the 4-H slate. I, of course, have a unique personality, but my mission is to operate without ego, in concert with the other 6 serving, creating consensus, and ensuring that we don't lose sight of what we aspire the district to be. Thank you.
I think I'm going to continue with this trend too. Hi,
Hi, I'm Negla Fatou. I live in Willowbrook with my husband and my 3 kids who are at Gower. So I have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So we're definitely going to be here for the long run and invested in the district and in the future of our schools. I have a bachelor's in biology and a master's in secondary education, both from the University of Michigan. So for almost 20 years, secondary education has been my passion. Over the years, I've had many experiences that have helped me understand how students learn. I've taught middle and high school science. I've also worked at the Smithsonian on developing curriculum around exhibits for teens. And I've also worked as a regional manager of a series of youth leadership conferences for gifted students. Currently, I'm an education consultant in curriculum design on a contract basis and spend my time being a mom of 3 and volunteering at my kids' schools and various community organizations like serving on the Gower Foundation Board. Last year, I served on the District 86 Strategic Planning Committee, and I was really excited about this opportunity. The whole process was fascinating and very inspiring for me. We spent a lot of time looking at the nuances of the district, so looking at the district's finances, looking at its curriculum structure, and trying to understand how we can learn from best practices across the nation and across the globe to help better and improve District 86. So by the end of all of this, we came up with our final plan, which I think is phenomenal because it actually provides students with the skill set that they'll need to thrive in 21st century careers, no matter what path they decide to pursue after high school. At the end of the process, I knew that the next steps in the execution were the most important. This strategic vision will only become a reality with the support of the school board, and I am driven to be a part of this. As a board member, I know that my role will not be to dictate the curriculum or my personal vision for the district. It will be to ensure that we have the right environment, tools, people, and resources available for teachers and district to prepare students for their ideal future. So I hope you'll support me for the 2-year term. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ursula Tanaway, and I've been a district president for about 23 years. I grew up here, I went to Isaacs, and then Dinsdale South. After that, I went to the University of Chicago and graduated with a bachelor's in the biological sciences. Then went on to the University of Wisconsin, where I earned a master's in bacteriology. I worked there with children with cystic fibrosis. We were developing a new testing method for infections that tend to plague them. After that, I came over to UIC and started up a lab with a new faculty member who was a chemist. So I worked in research science for a while, mentoring graduate students, undergraduates. So I got to see the other end of the student spectrum after they leave our doors. After that, I ended up taking a little bit of a break. I had 2 children. I started teaching swimming lessons, so I'm well versed in aquatic safety and a little bit about how to manage small groups of small children. I'm a regular classroom volunteer now that my children are in grade school and in preschool. I'm on the facilities committee in my feeder district, District 63. I'm a regular observer of board meetings. I attend almost every 86 meeting, and I have for over a year. I've been attending my feeder district as well to understand how those differ and how they feed into one another. I'm also a precinct committeeman, so I volunteer on community efforts, and an environmental activist. But what I see for 86 is that I think we should really continue this plan that has been started by the current board to align our curricula, because I think that will bring us a little bit closer together and settle down a lot of the differences that we think are there, that may really be there, and some of the ones that are really there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Hersman. Lived in Clarendon Hills for 34 years, and I'm running for re-election to the D86 school board. Public education is my passion. I was going to say that, but Negla took it, so I can say vocation and calling because they all fit equally well. I was a teacher before I became a lawyer. Then after law school, for 25 years I practiced school law, representing school districts and boards of education. I advised districts on policy matters and legal issues. I represented them in litigation. I negotiated collective bargaining agreements experience as the board's attorney. The union was on the other side of the table. Now I'm on the faculty of Loyola Law School, where I teach education law and labor and employment law. I view my service on the board as a way to give back to my community. I want to continue the work I set out to do when I was first elected to the board 4 years ago in 2015. You may remember the fall of 2014, when the district was on the brink of a teacher's strike. The strike was averted at the midnight hour 2 days before the strike was to begin, and a 2-year deal was struck. I was elected in 2015, and in my second year of office in 2016, I was appointed to the board bargaining team to negotiate a new contract to replace the 2-year contract. We successfully negotiated a fiscally responsible 4-year contract without alienating our teachers, in a professional, business-like manner at the bargaining table and not in the newspapers. Look, our teachers are our stock in trade. We want to attract the best, and in order to do that, we need to be competitive. You don't do that by lowballing. You can drive a hard bargain without driving teachers to strike. So here's what we did. We applied a PTEL formula tying salary increases to the CPI with a combination of freezes on the base and freeze on the experience step increase. We converted the past defined insurance benefit to a more fixed insurance benefit by moving employees to a Section 125 plan. We'll be negotiating a new contract, and I'm on the team for that negotiations as well. We have a referendum on the ballot, and I want to be a part of the board to resolve the issues, whether the referendum passes or fails. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for those introductory statements. Question number 1. District 86 is on its 3rd attempt to pass a referendum. Tell us whether you support or oppose the current referendum and whether your position has changed since the first referendum and why. We will start the answers with candidate Marone. And I'm happy to repeat the question at any time.
So the referendum, I just think right now is not the right time for the referendum. I think we right now have a very important teacher's contract that we are negotiating. It's a 4-year contract, and I believe that we need to know what that expense is with the teacher's contract. Then after the teacher's contract, we can revisit the referendum. But the teacher's contract does comprise the largest percent of the budget. And as far as the referendums, I did not vote for yes for the referendum in November. And again, I feel that this current referendum, it's not the right time for the reasons I just stated. And I have 10 seconds, so I will just finish up saying that if you look at if the referendum wins, if it loses, we'll have some solutions to address it. I have some very good ideas, and I think my private sector background is going to bring a lot of creativity to the board.
Thank you. Ms. Picopoulos.
I feel that it's very disappointing that candidates for office have to be tied to whether or not they are voting for or against the referendum. I would think that if you want someone in office, you would vote for someone who is fiscally responsible should the referendum pass, and who is, should the referendum pass, and someone who is going to make sure that they can put together something that the voters want if it fails. I am for quality schooling, and I truly believe that a referendum that the voters would support, according to the district's own survey on life safety, technology, and security, is something that I would support.
Ms. Fatou? Yeah, whether or not you support or oppose the current referendum and whether your position has changed since the first referendum was attempted. And
So I am in support of all 3 referendums. I voted yes on all of them. I have, full disclosure, actively canvassed and campaigned for the last referendum. I am advocating for it personally again as a citizen. And the reason is that I think that our district clearly needs a financial reset button. I think that, you know, I've spent some time talking to Josh Stevenson, the CFO, and looking at everything myself, and, you know, and just, you know, we need the money in order to address the facilities needs, and that's it. And so I think that we need to be able to set everything up with that, and then from there move forward and start to plan for the future of the district, including the academic needs and everything else that follows that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tenoy?
Hi. On the first one, in 2017, I voted yes. I wasn't very well versed in what was going on. I had a newborn at the time. My default is always to vote for school funding. The second time around, I had a lot of issues with transparency and the disparity in the project list between the one and the other. I was a yes for a long time, and in the end I was a no. On this one, it was basically the same thing. I have tried not to state my position quite as much because I wanted to hear what my community was saying and how they felt about it. And in the end, I have to say no for the same transparency issues.
Mr. Held?
So the first referendum failed 3-1, and the reasons why were it really didn't address exactly the long-term vision that the community has in mind for these two great schools. Now, I have a little badge right here that says vote yes. I voted yes in November, I'm voting yes in April. I did a lot of soul searching on the $166 million back in November, but reviewed line by line everything that was going to go in it. Having been to these schools in the past, they look the same as when I graduated in '99. And, you know, spoiler, they look the same when my mom and her 3 sisters graduated back in the 60s. There's a fundamental need to address both of these schools and bring them back up to the quality of the students that go to them. Ultimately, that's what we really need to do here. We provide the students with the best location to get the best education possible.
Mr. Turk?
So I have voted yes. I am in support of the referendum, and no, my position has not changed from referendum to referendum. I was part of the board that voted. That was part of the board that a referendum failed in 181, and we listened to the community and put it back on the ballot, and it was successful. And I think anybody who was a yes or was on the board should go look at the new HMS and be incredibly proud of what your tax dollars are going to. The school's in desperate need. Due to the limiting amount you can tax and increase every year, there just isn't the money to go around for the desperately needed infrastructure. So this is the only way to put schools in the shape that we needed to and give the community the caliber of schools that they moved here for. So I'm a yes.
Ms. Hanson?
I was in support and actively campaigning for the November referendum. Really disappointed that it did not pass, and I feel the same way for this referendum coming up. Before I served on the board at Gower, I served on our facilities committee for the 10-year life safety that we're talking about now, but at Gower. That referendum passed, and it's amazing what you can offer your students once you upgrade your facilities in curriculum, how you can support your students in that way, the innovative things that you can have your teachers come up with to offer for the students, and also the safety considerations. There are things that you wouldn't see or notice walking in or out. Serving on the board at Gower, there are things that we're alerted to through our superintendent that we take very good pride in, and that we take care of our students as well.
Thank you. Ms. Mayer?
On the first referendum, which was the $73 million referendum, I voted no. I served on the 2 task forces that made recommendations to the board. The first time, we recommended a much larger number, over $90 million, after reviewing a $200 million master facility plan. The board did not agree with us and cut the number down so low that people on the committee could not support it. There's been a lot of talk in the community that it was too expensive. In fact, it didn't ask for enough. I voted yes on the 166 because after the master facility plan, there was a pool audit, and there was a life safety plan that identified additional things. So I voted on that, yes on that one. I'm voting yes on this one. Our schools are in deplorable condition. They need to be upgraded. Why? Because the students deserve safe, ADA compliant schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hirschman.
I was on the board when all three referendum were presented. I was on the board when all three referendum were presented. As a board member, I voted in favor of them. As a resident of the district, I voted in favor of them. Our schools desperately need these improvements. And as a board member, I can't advocate for the referendum, but I would direct you all to go to the school district's website and read as much information as you can and learn the facts and make an informed decision regarding the referendum. Thanks.
Serving on this board will be a big job requiring major time commitment. Your conduct as a board member will be scrutinized by many. What motivated you to run, and what specifically have you done to prepare yourself to be an effective board member in this district? We'll start with Mr. Held.
Can we try it without it, if that's okay?
Sure. Yeah. I will project. I was in 9 musicals and plays back at Central, so I should be able to fill the room with my voice. Anyway, to the question. So what motivated me to run? So I mentioned that I live in Marker, and it's no secret that what motivated me to first take attention here to the district was some of the conversations that we had that were going on last summer. I found out through a lot of diligent research regarding past board policies, previous board votes, investment policy constraints, various Illinois, from Springfield, based rules and regulations that we have to stay in compliance to, that we were facing more than one single issue in a district. At the core, we're facing also a problem of a disunified community. And I think that's pretty fair to say that there's a lot of different factions that are competing for air right now. And that was the main thing that drove me to decide to run, was trying to bring some sort of a bridge there, trying to bring everybody back to the table and sit down as adults to address these questions and these problems that we are facing as one academic community, not just individual little pieces.
Mr. Turek.
So in reference to the motivation, it really is simple, and I often say it sounds corny, but it's simply to give back to the community that I feel has given me so much and continues to give my family and kids so much. As far as prepared, like I said, I've been on the 181 school board for 8 years. I was president for 2 years. We have balanced budgets. I've been part of getting negotiating labor contracts with the school union. Again, we had a referendum pass, had one fail, and I think my 8 years as a school board member has put me in a very unique position to hit the ground running day one if I was lucky enough to get elected and get your vote.
Ms. Tenoy.
I'm going to try to project. What motivated me to run was the first D86 board meeting that I actually attended and spoke at. I had just been to a community engagement session for the strategic plan, which is like a medium to long-term plan for the district that the community gets involved in, and we all give our input, and it's put together by a separate committee. Well, one of the things that I was most disappointed in was how the presentation went when they were trying to show us the baseline of the schools. All the data were separated by schools. There were no error bars, there were no distributions, it was all just averages. My main motivation to run is to change that culture, to provide more information to the community and to the board so that we can make good decisions. There's a lot of miscommunication, and that can be solved by good information presentation.
Ms. Hanson.
I'm going to try to project as well. So my motivation to run right now, like I said, I'm completing my term at Gower, and I'm a lover of all things education. Long before I even ran for the board at Gower, I have been interested in not only D86 Board of Ed, but also Gower Board of Ed. Familiar face before I was able to serve. So I'm taking what I've learned now at Gower District 62 and hopefully applying it to Hinsdale District 86. I think it's a unique time in our district, and look forward to using my talents there.
Thank you. Ms. Hurston.
Well, I'm running to continue the work that we began as a board back in 2015. I am the only board member that has experience on the negotiating team, and I've been appointed to serve on the negotiating team for the negotiations next year. I also believe it's very important to have someone with experience, whether the referendum passes or fails, because in either regard, it's important to have knowledge about how our finances work and how our entire board structure works and our school district works. So my experience, I think, is vital, and I would like to continue doing what I've been doing for the last 4 years. Thanks.
Ms. Bakopoulos.
I'm going to project as well. Thank you. I am running for the board because I'm very passionate about education. I've been an educator for 20 years. I have a doctorate degree in administration and leadership, and I feel that all my years in schooling and being a high school teacher and educator, I believe that these are valuable assets that will help in this district as well and help with the Board of Education. I'm very much for the core values of the district. These are also core values that I live by within my own school district, and it's all about putting the students first. And I am here, I would like to run and be on this board to help put students first, as well as looking at the future of my own children who are 6 and 7 years old who will be attending these high schools. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, as far as the time commitment, I have transferred some responsibilities at St. Isaac's. I'm now the former chairman of the men's group, and I was looking for something in the community. I did attend the District 86 meeting at Hinsdale South last April, and I thought it was a very well run meeting by the board. The citizens that were there spoke, had the opportunity to speak. The primary issue that was discussed that night was the buffer zone, and that did inspire me. I wrote the board. I'm a 1979 Hinsdale Central grad. I point to several teachers who had an impact on my life learning. I believe the district can operate with more unity. Plus, I have a passion for the students and their character formation.
Ms. Fatu.
Okay, let me know if you guys can't hear me, but I'm going to do the projection thing too. Okay, 3 things. So for me, like I said at the beginning, what motivated me to run is, and first of all, my passion is education, and my years of experience in that, I think, is something that I bring to the table that makes me qualified for this role. And having served on the strategic planning committee, it really inspired me to kind of look more closely at the nuance within District 86 and really be a part of the future of that. In terms of my experience, while I don't have direct school board experience, I do have experience, decades of experience serving in different leadership roles. I've been a PTO president, I've served as a secretary on the Gower Foundation board, amongst other things. So I think that my ability to work with different perspectives and different people and be able to come to common ground will serve me in this role. Thank you.
Ms. Mayor.
I'll project as well. So I've been attending meetings for 8 years, and I've seen all of the issues develop over time and the division in the community. And I decided to run in all transparency because I wasn't satisfied with the candidates that the caucus put forward. I felt that I had a little bit more background information and the skill set to tackle these complex issues as a lawyer. I know how to dig deep and really address all the issues and try to find solutions. As a former board member of D181, I have been involved in contract negotiations, eliminating deficits from budgets without hurting students. And so I think I bring a lot to the table, and that's one of the reasons I decided to run, because I feel that I'm one of the more qualified candidates. No disrespect to any of the others who are running.
Sure. Some of you have already mentioned it, but I want to see by a show of hands, how many have attended at least 3 District 86 board meetings? By a show of hands. And by a show of hands, how many have physically toured both of the school buildings? Thank you. If you could, share with us your top priorities and whether those priorities change with the outcome of the referendum. We will start with Ms. Hirschman.
Okay, well, if you look at our strategic plan, we have been focusing on curriculum equity as well as certainly a focus on the referendum, and additionally maintaining fiscal responsibility in the school district, and additionally maintaining unity or establishing unity and a cohesiveness throughout the community. Those are all goals that we need to continue. Right now, the focus certainly is on passing the referendum, but if the referendum doesn't pass, it's going to be a very challenging task to continue the excellent programs that we have within our fiscal restraints, but that's going to be a large challenge.
Thank you. Ms. Fatou?
Okay, so mine are going to be very similar to Kathleen because we are running together on a slate, but I think for me, personally, the unity piece is really important. I've seen a lot of division in the district, and while we have two incredible communities, I want to see us as one whole community working together across the entire district. So that's first of all. Second of all, personally for me, my passion for academics and for education and making sure that we are maintaining and continuing to create opportunities for our students that are accessible to everyone, that help drive them to grow and achieve their potential no matter what path they decide to take is also very important. And I think the last piece is also making sure that we're really keeping a close eye on that financial piece and locking in the financial stability of the district so that we are not always relying on a referendum. And regardless of whether it passes or not, we're going to have to figure out how to work on all three of those pieces.
Thank you. Mr. Marin?
As far as the referendum, the two most important issues to me, besides the referendum, number one, alignment of curriculum with the employment and career trends and opportunities, engineering, medical, which would be GP, physician assistant, registered nurse, dental, information technology, business, aviation, construction, trade school technician skills. I attend a lot of the conventions, PAC Expo convention in October. I was at the dental convention just a week ago, and there's a great need and opportunities for students in those areas. Number two, fiduciary responsibility to the community coexisting with the faculty compensation. And then we need to be prepared as a board if the referendum passes. We need to take a look at the funding. If there's an opportunity to move the funding over more years because of the changing campus needs. We need to be flexible, and I'll talk later on
Sure.
if it doesn't pass.
Ms. Mayer, please.
I agree with all the priorities that other candidates have said about fiscal stability, facilities, and things like that. I want to focus on the students. Whatever we do, this is a school district. We have to make sure that we provide opportunities for our students to maximize their potential. Things that have been eliminated because the referendums have failed in the past, if the referendum fails, we need to make sure we find a way to bring those activities back. I cannot sit here and tell you what that solution is right now. The board needs to get to work and figure out how, because if these kids are going to college, these kids cannot be deprived of an opportunity to get into the college of their choice. They need to be well-rounded students. So we need to focus on the students first and foremost in providing the facilities and the curriculum while doing it in a fiscally responsible manner.
Mr. Hill?
Sure. So, again, I spoke previously about the sense of community and perhaps the balkanization that we've seen over the course not just of a few years but a few decades of this great community, and the need to bring that together. Curriculum equity is a main driver of the board right now, continuing what we've started. It's not a quick fix. It's something that will take several years' time, but making sure that we get it in an efficient and fiscally responsible manner. There's some neat options out there that we can do to achieve that. Financial stability, of course, is a key aspect of all of this. Previous boards haven't exactly used resources wisely. I think we all know that. And we're feeling the pain of that now. So we need to, of course, make sure that we address that and make sure that we are building ahead for the future.
Ms. Tenoy.
Hi, I'm going to go on a theme that's been around the board, around the table for a while. My first priority is curriculum equality. We tend to use equity in a really strange way in our district, and that is to say that, you know, one set of students in one building can receive one kind of education and the other can receive another. My goal is really to continue what the current board has started and reverse that trend so that students are choosing what's right for them among the population of D86 students and not being separated by buildings anymore. And another part of that is to present data appropriately. If we can see that that is happening, we can be more proactive in adjusting and in preserving student opportunities.
Ms. Pakopoulos.
My current priority is quite close to Yvonne's about working with the board and with the administration to work on the cuts that are currently in place for the school district. I have researched and looked at some of the numbers, and the board itself has overdone their objective by $1.6 million. They looking to cut expenses when they could have looked elsewhere to cut these expenses. And I believe that we need to look as a district into bringing these programs back. A source close to administration actually discussed with me and shared with me that if this current board would commit to $2.5 million in repairs for the next year, then there would be wiggle room for a new board to come in and make some changes and reinstate programs, which is what I would like to discuss and do at board meetings. Thank you.
Mr. Turk.
So I have, first is fiscal responsibility, second is curriculum growth, and it goes into equity, and third is holding the superintendent accountable for the job that he or she now is responsible for. Well, Mrs. Mayor, I have the utmost respect for you. I think it's going to be very tough to reinstate some of these programs if the referendum doesn't pass. Now, while I agree with you again that we have to dig deep and figure out a way, but I just don't see how you're going to return all of those programs without the referendum. And I said it in public, I'll say it here. This is going to be a very difficult job if it passes, because you have to manage a very large referendum, and if it doesn't pass, it's going to be a very equally hard job.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson.
Excuse me. So there's been a lot of good top priorities already discussed. Curriculum equity. While we do that, we focus on the diverse learners that we have, and while we also continue to focus on teaching the whole student. We've already, this year, piloted the one-to-one initiative that's had a 3-year foundation. There's been a 3-year plan, so I'd like to see that continue using that initiative in bigger and brighter ways. A 4-year foundation that our district has already started is the social emotional learning. This has been the year of implementation for that. We need to continue doing that. And now, with our new superintendent, that is another priority that's kind of bubbled up for me, because that is the captain of our ship. That is the person who should know the most about our school district and who should be able to implement the vision that we have, that a board has for the district.
Great. Like most school districts, teachers work according to the terms and conditions of a collective bargaining agreement. The current CBA expires in June of 2020. If elected, you will be charged with the task of negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement. What concerns, issues, or goals do you foresee in the negotiation of that new contract? We will start with Ms. Mayer.
So I think we all have to recognize that the most valuable asset our district has is our teachers, and they are on the front line every day, making sure our kids get the best top-level education possible. And so we need to protect that asset, and we need to acknowledge it and respect it in the compensation that we provide them. This is a challenging time. 80% of the budget is made up of their salary and benefits and that of staff. And so I think that the new board needs to take a look and see if there are ways to have the teachers work with the administration, work with the board, maybe to free up some money for longer term planning for facilities in the future. Because right now, obviously, we didn't have enough money to even plan for some of the yearly fixes, and so we have to go to referendum. But that's going to be very hard to do, because these teachers don't make a lot of money. Well, they make a lot of money, but they are required, let me reset, sorry. The teachers, okay, I'm out of time. I'll come back to that.
Ms. Bacopoulos.
As a teacher, I've sat on the other side of that discussion with teacher contracts. So I have been on the other side of the teachers' contracts, and obviously as teachers, we want what's best for students. We also want to be compensated for our time and for our energy that goes into everything that we do. As a board member, we need to look at it on the reverse side of what the teacher would look at it, and we need to be fiscally responsible with our contracts in order to sustain the current student experiences at District 86.
Ms. Tenoy.
Hi, I can foresee that an issue that will be brought up is the increased class sizes that we're starting to implement, especially that were talked about at the last board meeting. I can see those being a huge issue being brought up with teachers. They've been tweeting about it. I think a fair way to negotiate teacher compensation is to tie raises to CPI. As the district's finances are tied to limitations based on CPI, I think that their raises, it would be fair to say, should be tied to CPI as well. That way we can stay within a budget and make this a multi-year, financially sustainable contract.
Yeah, Mr. Helm.
Well, sure. So I think really the goals, one thing we want to do is we're sitting down with them. There has to be respect on both sides of the table. I hope that we can make sure, as Kathleen mentioned in the past, that this next contract negotiation is negotiated there at the table and not in the newspapers, as she said. So we have to have that respect both ways. We need to make sure that while we recognize that teachers are our talent, they're the stock and trade, so to speak, of the district, we have to make sure that we have competitive offering. At the same time, we need to respect that it's not my checkbook that I'm writing from, it's the district. It's the taxpayers themselves. Issues that we have, of course, the referendum is going to impact one way or the other. And concerns is, from a broad standpoint, if we face potentially a 2020 recession or the fear of that, how that could also impact long-term what we decide for this 4-year CBA.
Ms.
I love that
Fatu.
chime.
So I don't know that I have much more to offer at this point beyond what everyone else has talked about, but I think that, in terms of, I agree, right? Teachers are what make the district and the learning experience what it is. So we have to make sure that the negotiations are amicable. We have to make sure that we are, that the board is coming in and that the other side is coming in willing to make compromises that are necessary in order to maintain the financial stability of the district. So in terms of concerns, in terms of challenges that we'll face, I do think that regardless of whether the referendum passes or not, there will be financial concerns and constraints that the district has to manage in order to deal with the future, because 80% of the budget is salaries. The other piece to that is that potentially the whole curriculum equity project and how that plays out with courses could impact teachers in the school.
Ms. Hertzman.
I'd like to see us continue the collaborative approach that we used in negotiations in 2016. It worked really well. The teachers are willing to look at creatively at ways of cost containment, and when they have skin in the game, so to speak, we end up with a good result. And we did that with the insurance, and I'd like to continue doing that, as well as also considering freezes both on the base and on the experience step increases as we did before, and of course tying into the CPI. We did that all very effectively 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I'd like to see us continue doing that in the next set of negotiations. And I think the teachers are well set for that collaborative process.
Thank you. Mr. Marin.
Well, my position is that I agree with the board that teachers are stakeholders in this budget. And my feeling is that with the referendum, that they're going to benefit from what we do with capital improvements. There's going to be capital improvements done to both campuses. Right now, the amount of the referendum is too much. And I think once we get the teachers' contract negotiated and remind the teachers that they're going to benefit from the improvements at both of the campuses along with the students and the parents. My background in the private sector has included negotiating, representing clients like Clorox and Coke Foods, selling products to big retailers across the Midwest. And negotiations, you have to be creative, and at the end of the day, you should both win.
Mr. Turk.
I'm super supportive of the teachers. I think that I don't think I know that they produce a great product as our students exit the schools. But the contract has to be fair, and I've had the opportunity to be on the board when we negotiated 2 of them. And the first one, we used traditional bargaining that I don't think went real well. The second one, we used interest-based bargaining that went very well. And we did things like minimize and lower the pension spiking. They're contributing more to the health insurance, so they need a fair contract, one that we can be responsible for fiscally. And Kathleen, I'd like to thank you for the hard work you've done on 86. I commend you for that.
Ms. Hanson.
So I also can agree that teachers are our most valuable assets in our district. I like what Kathleen said, that it's obviously much better if you have a collaborative approach. I think the final product is going to be most beneficial for the district. We need to negotiate a financially sustainable contract, and it's never easy, but we want to make sure we are also able to attract the best teachers to our district, and we're still considered a destination place for them to want to come and serve our students.
It's been mentioned a few times by several of the candidates, but curricular disparities between South and Central have been a hot-button issue addressed both by the public, the board, and the administration. Examples that I can think of that may or may not exist in the future are, for example, separate department chairs between the 2 campuses. What is your understanding of the extent of this curricular disparity issue, and what are possible solutions? We'll start with Ms. Fatou.
The extent of the disparity, and then there's the second part.
Yeah, basically, if you could just explain your understanding of the issue as you see it, and what possible solutions there may be to address it.
So I've been following this pretty closely, and so one of the things, I think that, first of all, I'm really glad that the district is taking a look at this. My understanding is that there's 2 parts to it in terms of disparity, right? One piece to it is that there is, within the same schools, there are some inconsistencies that they found, and so that's something that this process can hopefully help address, like in terms of grading and just, where students are at different points in time in terms of the same course. The second piece to it is course offerings across the district, and I think that what we need to do is make sure that as a district, we're continuing this effort to align the curriculum across the entire district, making sure that all students have equal access to the same opportunities that meet them where they're at, right? Because what the district does really well right now is that we've started this growth model where you're looking at each student individually, and so we need to make sure that we maintain opportunities for all students across the district where they are at, and then allow opportunities for them to grow.
Thank you. Mr. Held.
Well, sure. So having read through both program guides, you can see that for both schools, there are some differences. Some bigger than others in courses that are offered. In some cases, there are courses that can't be offered one school over the other. But part of the solution to this, and why we're calling this curriculum equity as opposed to curriculum equality, is that we can't simply just take one program guide and say every class at one is at the other and choose the most classes possible. Because again, we can't simply hire a teacher to teach 5 or 6 kids. We have to be creative as a part of the whole curriculum disparity question. We can solve that in part by the use of technology. We're talking about one-to-one or e-learning, a hybrid model, for example, as a way to use lower cost ways to have basically a class split over both campuses. The teacher goes one campus and then to the other. But again, these are preserving both schools as individual entities.
Ms. Tenoy.
I think the extent of curriculum disparity varies by department. There are some that have been working closely together and exchanging teachers between the 2 buildings, and others where the programs are so different that there's really no way that they could get together right now as it stands. I think some of those things need to change because it's, as I mentioned before, the idea of equity being building-based as opposed to being student-centered are 2 different concepts. And I think we've gone too far in the building-centered version of equity and not enough in the student-centered. So one of those things is one of the ways is to do a benchmarking curriculum equity where all the teachers who teach, for example, English 1 honors get together and decide, we want to teach these 10 skills so that they're all learning the same thing regardless of how that teacher chooses to teach.
Mr. Turek.
So curriculum disparity, I don't know, holistically, I don't think there should be a lot of disparity between the two schools. But on the other side of that currency, I think you have to meet the curriculum where the student is. And that's tricky, and I agree you have to be creative on a number of ways, and it's hard to fund something where, as someone referred to, if there's 5 students in one building, how do you fund that with a class? So you have to be creative. In reference to your specific question of separate department chairs, I really don't know. I mean, from onset, can one department chair service both buildings? Possibly, but for this one board member would have to look at it closer to come up with exactly a statement. So I just don't know about separate department chairs.
Okay. Ms. Pacopoulos.
I currently work in a district that has achieved curriculum equity. We have 3 schools in our high school district with 1 curriculum chair overseeing all 3 buildings, so it can be done. Dr. Carol Baker, who is currently the assistant superintendent over academics at D86, has come from my district, and she actually was a curriculum chair overseeing the 3 buildings. So who better than to ask how to achieve this in terms of all schools? If we do go to a model of curriculum equity with division head model, we could be saving $340 plus $1,000 a year. So just by going to 1 division head model, which could go back to students, and that's what we want, is students first. So we could save money by also having 1 department chair, but we can also have curriculum equity with that 1 department chair, as my district has.
Ms. Mayer.
So curriculum equity doesn't necessarily mean all things are equal. We have to take our students as we find them. There are different tiers of students, and we need to make sure that we provide the opportunity for all students to maximize their achievement. So I know that there may be students coming into Hinsdale South that are coming in at a lower achievement level because they come from different demographics and may not have family support, and feeder schools may not be providing services. So I think we need to make sure that whatever we do, there will be differences because we have to meet each student as we find them and make sure that we try to lower the achievement gap for all the students so that when they graduate, they can go forward and maximize their opportunities.
Ms. Hanson.
So when I read about curriculum equity, curriculum disparity, I always feel like there's 3 different components to this, 3 different languages. So I always hear about standards of practice, which I agree should be equal across the district. So if there's a course that earns college credit at one school, that should be the same at the other school. But then even simpler things. When my freshman came in, there was a PE exemption that existed in one building that for many years that became something brand new for the other building. So things like that should be similar across the district. That's access and opportunity. And I think that's much more to the student handbook. When we talk about curriculum alignment, absolutely. I think that it's been a long time coming. Why not use the best practices between the 2 buildings for common benchmarks and assessment, and knowing that there's different ways to assess whether or not students understand the benchmarks.
Mr. Marin.
So I'm aware of it, of the curriculum equity. I think we should be very similar. I don't think we have to be identical with the curriculum based on what some of the other members have just touched on as far as demographics being a little bit different, and that's going to fluctuate. So I really like what Tina just shared about 1 chair for the 3 schools. I think we have to look at streamlining. There's only so much money in the pot. We have to live within our means, and we have to be creative, and I think the board I know is looking at going with the 1 chair. As far as understanding the equity of the curriculum, I read in the paper that AP Biology last year, Hinsdale South had 36 students in AP Biology, and I think Hinsdale Central had 24. And the street that I grew up on in Hinsdale, there was a girl that attended Hinsdale South, and she did that because she wanted to make the swim team, but she also had a great experience.
Generally speaking, enrollment at South has declined. I'm sorry, Ms. Hirschman, yeah.
Pass.
Very quickly, I heard some really great things from everybody, so I'm not going to repeat what they said. We have a wonderful assistant superintendent for curriculum who is already implementing the ideas that our community has brought to us. And I would suggest that you go back and look at the minutes and the materials accompanying those minutes from about a month ago where we laid out the whole curriculum equity plan. And then two other things I want to emphasize here, and that is we've got two great schools, and what we're doing now is we're looking at what we're doing in both schools and marrying the best qualities throughout our curriculum in both schools. And secondly, we're going to use technology to break down our walls and our barriers so that we can efficiently offer the maximum course offerings across both campuses without walls getting in the way.
Thank you, and I won't turn the page so quickly last time. So generally speaking, enrollment at South has declined while enrollment at Central has increased. This has prompted many varying opinions related to boundaries, utilization of space, and capacity. What are your thoughts on this issue? We'll start with Ms. Hanson.
No, let me put my card. Boundaries, so with the enrollment declining in Hinsdale South and increasing in Hinsdale Central, I think when it finally hit a crossroads was when there was a point where there needed to be additions onto Central to accommodate the growing populations when there wasn't space and that there was space left over in South. So that kind of seemed to be where the discussion bubbled over larger. From there came different things. Discussion about grade centers, which I don't believe is where I want to see our district going. It was looked at already in July 2016 by the board, so we all know that it takes opportunities away from students, loss of individual culture of each school, loss of continuity of services. As far as boundary discussion, there has been already a little bit of movement of boundaries from when we eliminated the buffer zone. So with those students that were moved over to brought to South, we're able to fill at least a little bit of the space over there.
Thank you. Ms. Tenoy.
Enrollment issues have been an issue for a long time. You can see plots of how enrollment has changed over time, and that's normal. In all kinds of other school districts, populations shift and the schools have to accommodate where the students live and where they're coming from. 61, the Eisenhower Feeder District experienced a huge boom in population, where for a while they had 4 elementary schools feeding into 1 middle school. Populations shifted, they closed 2 schools, they rearranged them, they dealt with their population issues and their building spaces as that population shifted and changed. We need to do the same. We can't keep treating boundaries as stationary if our population is moving within that district.
Mr. Held.
From a utilization of space standpoint, I know there's some folks who are talking about just simply taking kids and rebounding them one school to the other as though that simply magically solves some sort of a problem. It really doesn't. Moving kids just for that sake doesn't accomplish anything. When we had the conversation about grade level centers, taking both, having a freshman, sophomore campus or junior, senior campus, let's all remember that Hinsdale South is a smaller school. Central has larger capacity. South would be overpopulated, Central would be underpopulated. We have to spend millions to try to make South a bigger school to go to grade level centers. It's not financially responsible. It halves the opportunity for students by doing that. You also lose the quality of both great schools. I'm not for changing boundaries right now. I'm not for filling one school just to fill it. It doesn't make sense.
Mr. Turek.
So I feel that one of the big motivators when an individual and family buys a house is certainly if they have kids, is where their kids are going to go to school, both grammar school and middle school and high school. And I think to shift that on them is not what I'd support. Hence why we need a referendum, because people don't want to buy in a certain district and then all of a sudden get moved around. I think it's stressful on them, and I think it's stressful certainly on the students if they have that type of thing weighing over their thoughts. And I am not in support of a grade level centers. I just don't think it makes any sense. I don't think it solves anything. I think getting a referendum does solve the problem.
Ms. Bacalpas.
school districts across the nation shift boundaries all the time. There aren't huge debates on whether or not to do it. We have 2 schools in a district. We are one district. So therefore, if we need to shift students, we need to shift students. If we need to find out a way of how to balance enrollments, what good is it going to do if in 2022, Central has 28,100 students? What are those students' experiences going to be in an overcrowded school? What is it going to be when South's population is half of Central's in 2022? How are those student experiences going to be the best that they can be in high school? So we always need to look at everything over the course of every year, and the fact that it has been so stagnant for so many years has done a disservice to this community and these schools in this district.
Ms. Patu?
So I think that there are a few things that come into play here. First of all, I agree. People make a decision when they move where they move for a specific school. And I think that when we look at populations, they are always in flux. And, you know, case in point with the buffer zone, it was created because South was going to be over-enrolled. And so I think that if we're going to be constantly looking at boundaries, then you're constantly going to be moving people around. So we have to ask the right questions. And I think in my mind, this goes back to the perceived and the real curriculum inequities and making sure that we are looking at the core of the issue, providing consistent opportunities for students across the district and addressing their academic needs accordingly. Because we have 2 incredible schools, 2 incredible populations, and we just, you know, the focus is on the students and their needs.
Ms. Hirschman?
We need to recognize the fact that our schools aren't located equidistantly within the 7 communities that comprise our district. We are going to have a larger attendance concentration in the central attendance area than the south attendance area. That's a fact. We can't move our schools. So we need to acknowledge the fact that one school is going to have a higher enrollment than the other. What we need to do is move on and fix both of our schools so that both schools provide excellent learning opportunities, or continue to provide excellent learning opportunities for our students. And we should be focusing on making all of our families want to go to both of our schools, which are excellent schools.
Mr. Marin?
Well, I mentioned earlier at the D86 meeting in Hinsdale South last April, it was about the primary focus was on the buffer zones, and I wrote the board the next day and I shared my thoughts. I felt that safety and proximity to school was number 1. We want a safe trip, whether it's walking, riding a bike, taking a bus, not over railroad tracks as much as we can. And I also felt that we need to keep, especially in the public schools that are the feeder schools of the high schools, do our best with the boundaries to keep those students together as they enter freshman year because of the emotional adjustment. State scores, smaller schools score better, and the board at that meeting came to the conclusion that having the rebalance of South and Central would benefit both schools. And I want to just say one thing. A great example of the community working together. HMS overcrowding, the Lane school parents volunteered to go to the.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, or Ms. Mayor.
I'm going to take a different approach to this answer, and I'm going to say that we shouldn't be moving boundaries. We shouldn't be moving students from one school to another until we answer the question and really dig deep and find out why we have empty seats at Hinsdale South. There's a reason, and it's the elephant in the room, and it's called Section 8 housing. And I think we all need to have this hard conversation and ask ourselves why, when Section 8 housing came to town, people pulled their kids out of Hinsdale South and into private school and created more empty seats that otherwise would have been. I'm saying right now that unless we address that and try to figure out how to attract those families back, we're going to move kids, we're going to change boundaries, and other kids are going to just move into private school. We're just going to keep creating more empty seats. So I think we need to have a hard conversation.
If the referendum fails, the current board has stated that cuts to sports and activities will remain. If elected, would you support or oppose this decision, and why? We'll start with Ms. Tenoy.
You know, I wasn't a fan initially of revisiting those cuts because I watched the board members make them, and they just looked like it was the hardest decision they had been through in a long time. But looking at the basis for what those cuts were and what projects are supposed to be funded by those cuts, I think a lot of those are judgment calls, and I think the community is telling us that more important than some of the things that those cuts would fund are these activities that keep kids out of trouble, that give them something to do, that give them opportunities beyond their day-to-day, their 8 to 3 educational opportunities. Those are more important to the community members that I talk to when I walk around neighborhoods.
Hanson.
So the question was, if the referendum fails, would
Yes.
we be interested to revisit the cuts?
Yeah, would you support the position that the cuts would remain in effect, or would you oppose that, and why?
Well, this is a tough one. Nobody wants the cuts. I have taken a hard look and thought about different avenues. I feel like it's worth it to go back in and look again, see if there's anything else. If you don't sit in the seat, you don't have all of the information, right? So you have to take a look. I think we owe it to all our students to do that. But I do trust that the board has, I mean, if there was another way, they probably would have done it. So definitely take another look, and if there's another way to approach it, I would be interested in discussing that as well.
Ms. Mayor.
If the referendum fails, I think that the board needs to move forward with all the life safety items. We need to make our schools ADA compliant. But again, we need to make sure that our kids are in the best competitive position going into their college applications. And we need to make sure they're well-rounded and can do their extracurriculars and do their sports. Kids are relying on possible athletic scholarships. So I want the board to revisit it and try to find a way. And it has to be shared pain. This may be, if cuts are necessary, maybe that's an opening with the teachers. Maybe there's something they can give back. I don't think the board's gone down that road yet because they hope that the referendum will pass. But I think we need to try and revisit and find a way to bring those activities back.
Mr. Barron.
I agree that we should bring the activities back. If it doesn't pass, we really need as a board to work to reinstate sports and other extracurricular activities that were cut, factoring in streamlining or shared resources. Look at the club hockey example. Along with imposing activity fees for clubs, sports, band, etc., to subsidize the budget. And also, students should continue extracurricular activities in the community as well. Scouts, Musco District East Summer Camp, community house volunteer, tutor, part-time job, a lot of opportunities to get great life skills in the community.
Thanks. Mr. Turek?
My feeling is that if the referendum doesn't pass, there will be cuts. What they exactly are, the new board will have to determine. I commend the current board for, I was at that meeting, and it was not an easy meeting for them to start deciding what to cut and how to get to a budget. And if anybody who thinks this is a scare tactic that the current board is doing to pass a referendum, I don't think so. If it doesn't pass, you will have to cut things. You can just look at the budget. There's not enough money to support all the activities that are currently there. So roll them back. I don't see how you can.
Mr. Held?
So, if the referendum fails, we need the money for life safety and security. It's an unfortunate thing, but we do. Again, this is a cumulative problem that the district faces with both of these buildings. We owe it to take, as Cynthia said, one final review there of the cuts to make sure there isn't anything that was missed. I don't think there was, unfortunately. And what we need to do at that point in time with the cuts is see how do we prevent 1 or 2 lost years of seniors. Because again, these kids, they rely on football, potentially for a scholarship. Maybe they're looking at some other program there that's going to bulk up their transcript for some particular college. It could be the difference between an acceptance and a really thick envelope and something pretty thin that puts them on a path of depression. So we need to be using creative solutions, partnerships where all possible to allow these students the opportunity to shine and show why they deserve that scholarship, they deserve that extra little bit.
Ms. Hirschman?
This was an exceedingly difficult decision to make, and we agonized over the budget, looking for whatever we could do not to cut these activities. And I voted against the cuts because I felt that should be spread out across all of the activities. But I also realized the reality is we need to do life safety, security, and ADA, and the money isn't there to do that. And my concern is if there is a notion that we can reinstate these activities. The question is, where are we going to get the money to do these really, really critical projects for our schools?
Ms. Fatou?
So, yeah, I mean, it's really tough. And I think that, you know, the reality is that the board has already identified these cuts. And the reality is that if the referendum fails, that they will have to start there. That will be the starting point. And, you know, at the same time, though, I do believe that it's really important for the current board and the new board when they step in, if it hasn't been done, to take a closer look and see if there is any room for us to move around, to move anything around, and try to address the needs accordingly so that we're not impacting the student experience as much as possible.
Sorry.
At least I'm not the only one.
Sorry, the other piece about the activity fees, I've heard that thrown around a lot. And I think that while it's an interesting idea, we have to recognize that we have a really broad demographic in our district. And so whatever we implement or institute as a board, can I have like those 5 seconds that I laughed? Sorry, just really quickly, that we need to make sure that we're making it accessible to everyone across the board.
Thanks. Mr. Koplis?
So last month I attended a meeting that Dr. Law held at Q-Bar where he said we don't call them extracurriculars, we call them co-curriculars because they go with our curriculum. So my question is, why would we cut anything that has to do with our curriculum? I sat down and spoke with my own administration and asked them where could we cut so that we don't have to do this to our students, so we don't have to interfere with the student experience. And just simple things that my principal told me was look at the adults. Cut in terms of conferences, travel, food, at meetings, anything gifts related, supplies that are obsolete nowadays. There's so many things. He said I could shave 10% off the budget right now. So we need to take a look at other places where we can cut, where we're not cutting from our student experiences. And as I said earlier, if we commit roughly to $2.5 million in repairs for the next school year, there could be wiggle room for us to make these extracurriculars or co-curriculars come back.
Bless you. Attracting and ultimately retaining high-quality administrators at all levels of the organization is a goal of every school district. How do you believe the district should go about hiring administrators, and what would you be looking for in district leadership? We will start with Ms. Turek. I'm sorry, Mr. Turek.
Attracting high-quality administrators, I think, is a key element of having strong academics and academic growth. You have to have consistency. We've struggled with this in D181. We've had incredibly high turnover at the administration level. It's no real secret. You pay for what you get typically. You can look, and that doesn't mean it has to be excessive, but we have to be competitive with the other districts we compare ourselves to. And if we're competitive, I think people will certainly love to come to a district like 86. But yeah, you have to pay them what the market rate is.
Yeah, Ms. Hurstman.
Well, I have to agree with Mr. Turek.
Is that so hard?
No, but speaking from experience, to higher quality, there's a cost, and there's a market competitiveness, and that's a reality. You cannot lowball administrative salaries and expect to get quality administrators because it's a competitive field. We're fortunate now that we have a good, stable, full hierarchy of district-level administrators as well as principals. And our goal now is to retain the administrators that we have and not have to go out and find some new ones. And I think we're doing okay so far.
Ms. Mayor?
So I think our district has a lot of challenges, and I agree that right now the central administrative staff is very qualified. We do have a recently appointed superintendent who's going to be replacing Dr. Law, and I think that the question really that the community needs to ask is, do we want to promote internally, or do we want to go out and do a national search? For me, the question is, does that person have the skill set, the experience to lead this district forward if the referendum fails? And if the referendum passes, does that person have the skill set and experience to position us so that this never happens again and that we have enough money built into the budget? So it's about looking at that individual skill set and then setting performance goals that are measurable so that when they have to evaluate the performance, they can decide whether or not they need to make a change.
Ms. Fatu?
So I think I agree with a couple things that people have said, and right now the stability of the district is really important, and I'm grateful that we have someone internally who's familiar with the circumstances, familiar with everything that we're dealing with, who can kind of help lead us in the interim. I also think, though, that we really do need to take a closer look and make sure that we have an individual in there in the long term, and it could be the same, it could be Tammy Prentice again, but making sure that that person is aware of the challenges that the district has, is visionary, and can plan for the future, not just looking at the current immediate needs of the district. Someone who empowers the teachers and the community to bring out the best, and everyone and all of the experiences that they have, and of course experience is crucial and key.
Ms. Tenoy?
How I would hire an administrator, I would do an executive search, because you need to, even if it is that same internal person, an executive search where you open that position up to more people gives the final person who's chosen legitimacy and support. Things that I would be looking for in a new administrator is how they present information to the board. The board can only make decisions based on what the administrators present them as their background information. I would look for somebody who can work with a broad economic diversity, because that, I think, is what we have in our district. We have about 15% that qualify for free and reduced throughout the district. We have some of the wealthiest families in our district as well. And somebody who can also deal with a budget and the political procedure of passing a referendum, especially if this one is not.
Ms. Hanson?
I'm grateful also. I think it's important that our administrators have a foundational knowledge of our district, as complex as it is. However, I am interested also in, I feel like if you don't look, you don't know what you'll find. I think people have a general idea on how they want to see our district going. I still think we're a destination district, warts and all. I believe in this district passionately, so I want to find administrators and people who believe in us, choose us, want us, and maybe have a vision that maybe we haven't even thought about yet, a direction to take our school. I know it's out there because I believe it. I'm here still running for this board, looking forward to bringing my kids through this school as well. And so I want administrators who have that vision as well.
Thanks. Mr. Hurd? I'm sorry, Mr. Held.
So when we're taking a look from an administration standpoint, we do want to make sure we cast our net wide. That's a responsible thing for the district, for the students, for the other administrators within there. Institutional knowledge is key. So at this point in time, we do have that stability, with the appointment of Ms. Prentice to the position. And to echo some of the other comments, though, we do want to make sure that we have the right leader for the job. Whether or not the referendum passes, the district is going to need extraordinarily strong leadership, either to manage and wrangle the $139 million referendum over the course of years, or to oversee what might be a very painful several-year transition if that money is not available. So we need to make sure that we can find that sort of strong leader. And again, it could be the same one from within, but we owe it to ourselves. Most importantly, we owe it to the kids to cast that net wide.
Ms. Pacopoulos?
I have to agree with what Ms. Hanson said. I do agree that when we're looking for administrators, we'd be doing a disservice to our community if we're not looking to see what's out there and what someone else can bring in and what kind of perspective they can bring in and from their experiences and what they have dealt with in their own school districts that they might be coming from. So I definitely think that we need to look when we're looking at administrators, what kind of resume they're bringing in and making sure that they are adhering to, of course, our 4 values at District 86, which are student first, diversity, fiscal responsibility, and excellence.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Well, what got me thinking was we had over 7 years, I think, we had 3 different principals at Hinsdale Central. So there's other dynamics at work here too that we have to be cognizant of as a board. I agree with executive search. I know at the grade school level, St. Isaac's did that, and the search went very well. They hired a principal from Buffalo Grove, and she's running the school. The enrollment's up. We also have to stop and think what the teachers are getting when they come and teach at District 86. They're getting great locations, great families, great students, and we offer them a very, very good package. So the board has to look at both sides.
Thank you. Our goal was to get 9 questions in tonight, so we are at our time limit, and I'm going to ask the candidates if you'll indulge me with one final question. It'll be our 9th question. Regardless of the outcome of the referendum, history says this is going to be a close vote. If elected, how will you work to heal the historic divide between the South and Central communities? I'm going to start with Mr. Marin.
Unity is critical for the district. And, you know, as a board member, it's important to be visible in the community and accessible. And I'm very proud that our family, we've attended both Hinsdale Central and Hinsdale South, whether it's sports, whether it's concerts, theater. So, you know, that's really important to be visible, and we have to be transparent so that the people in the district get the information, have time to review the information that the board's contemplating with what's at stake. And you just have to ask, you know, act in good faith representing the community and making sure that we get the best outcome for the students, for the dollars that we invest in the students.
Mr. Held.
This is pretty much one of the main issues that drove me to actually be here to put my name in, is the fact that we have had, unfortunately, this negativity and fracturing within our community. And ultimately, it's not really affecting us as the adults, right? It affects the kids and the quality of our education. We need to bring people back to the table. One of the ideas that our 4-H slate has been championing for the last 2 months is the idea of set town halls or listening sessions, if you want, that will rotate around the district, not just in this election year, but going forward. The idea that we can have a dialogue with the community, where it's not just simply up here, us here at a table, you speak to us and then we speak to you, but we're going back and forth, trying to respect each other in that fashion. Also, a community task force between feeder schools, between parents, people who don't have kids in the district, taxpayers, representing those districts, having them be a channel to us from some of those quiet voices that are out there that maybe don't feel like they're being recognized or heard.
Thank you. Ms. Tenoy?
I'm going to agree with Mr. Held here. I think we need a broader dialogue, because the voices that I hear at board meetings are very different than the voices that I hear when I walk around and talk to our residents from neighborhood to neighborhood. And we need to get more of those voices together in the room and be representing more than just the loudest voices who have the time to come out to meetings. I think we need some structural transparency. There are some things that just are not told to us that needs to change. And the culture of response to the community. When residents bring concerns to the board, there's been lately a pattern of saying, no, that's not true, saying you're a terrible person for bringing that up, and then a few months later saying, oh yeah, maybe that was right, and I think that needs to change.
Ms. Batu?
So this is something that is really important to me, and one of the main reasons I'm up here as well. I think, to piggyback on what Eric had said, the town halls for sure. The task force idea is one that's really close to my heart, because I think that it's really important to provide an opportunity for people to feel heard and acknowledged and part of the community. And so in our minds, this task force would consist of members from every single feeder district. They would meet regularly within their own feeder districts, and then they would meet regularly together, collaboratively, to try to identify solutions to challenges we may have within the district and find common ground, and then continue to work collaboratively with the board and the district to make sure that we're addressing all of this and building a community around the entire district.
Mr. Turek?
Me?
Yep.
So yeah, this when I went to 86. This wasn't that way. I was on the swimming and diving team, and we commingled with South kids all the time. So it does get the students together, and they ease up. And I sure hope that the parents would then come together as one district, because we are one district. So I would start with the students, getting them together through clubs or activities, and hopefully the parents and adults would follow.
Ms. Hirschman?
Oh, I have to echo that. I think that's such a great idea. This has been a goal for our board as long as I've been on the board. It is a real conundrum. It's a difficult problem, but it appears to me that if we start with the students, Because when the students get together, like when we have the South Central football game, when we have other activities that involve both schools, it's a great experience. For example, we're going to have a band trip next year, and it's going to be both schools' bands going together. I think you start with the students, but then certainly community task forces. But we need to have a positive attitude about this. We cannot be dividing ourselves. We need to have a positive attitude.
Ms. Mayor.
I think we have to acknowledge that a lot of the divide is not with the students themselves, but with the adults. 3 or 4 years ago, when the teachers threatened to strike, it was wonderful seeing the communities from both schools come together, the adults and students, to advocate to the board to not allow the teachers to go to strike and resolve the contract dispute. We need to find a way to bring the adults back together and not be so divisive towards each other. They feel disrespected, they feel they haven't been listened to. I've been speaking to a lot of community members that feel that they have gone to the board with concerns and they really haven't been heard. So whether it's town halls or task forces or community engagement meetings, we have to find a way to get the community to feel like they're being listened to and that the board is responsive to them.
Ms. Hanson.
I like the concept that we seem to be going towards where we're talking about 2 buildings in 1 district, whereas we used to have 2 high schools that really worked independently for a very long time, worked with the needs within their buildings, and now we're thinking about, in fact, under curriculum, marrying best practices and making it more of a cross-district thing. I think that's going to help a lot of our district unity. I think that's going to take a lot of the hurt away from the general community about who's getting what, who's not getting this. I think that we are really good at acknowledging that we have wide diversity in our district. We are getting there with respecting, but we need to be deliberate in fostering inclusion for everyone in this district. We are very diverse, and so that means that we have to figure out a way to include everyone, all aspects, all far corners, and what it is that they need.
Okay. Last word, Ms. Topoulis.
I believe that as a board and as a community, we need to come together to ask implementing questions that we can ask and discuss about effective delivery of institutional goals, standardizing, allocating, and documenting, and fairly always addressing our goals within the district and our mission and vision statements that we have. We really need to refer and deflect back to that always when we're working together, no matter what decisions that we make as a board and as a community.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.